Hello, friends. Welcome to the Coach Cast with Jim Golgowski. I'm your host, Chad Birger. Today, I'm joined again by co-host Sam Dooyema. We're going to talk with Coach Glow about the 2026 recruiting class for the University of Sioux Falls Cougars. And a special thing today, we are live all together for the show. Awesome. Glad to have you guys with us.
Great to be here, man.
Yeah,
live and in person.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, we got a lot of guys to go over. But before we get there, I did want to, throw a shout out here to our sponsor, Atomic Wings of Sioux Falls. Atomic Wings is located at 1502 East 69th Street, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's right across 69th Street from the USF Stadium. Make sure to get out there. They've still got lunch specials going on over at Atomic Wings, big Super Bowl specials, lots of stuff going on. So make sure to go support the guys over at Atomic Wings. And just to show, that we had a little bit of Atomic Wings before the show, Coach, I don't know if you want to join me here, but
we got a pile of bones over there. I didn't know we were supposed to save it for the show. I would have slowed down maybe.
Oh, that's okay.
Nah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. That was great.
Outstanding.
They were awesome.
Fantastic. Yep, we love Atomic Wings. We appreciate them. Make sure to go out and support them every chance you get. Love some Atomic Wings. Well, Coach, let's go ahead and dive into the recruiting class here. So we're going to jump into the 2026 National Signing Day class that you had, and we'll start off with the offensive line, most important position on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt really good about this year's group. Numbers, quality, depth, size. We talked earlier while we were eating the wings that we had all the kids back this past weekend for a committed weekend, and to see those guys all together in person, it's an impressive looking group.
Yeah. Well, let's dive right in here and tell us a little bit about some of the signees for this year.
Yeah, first guy up is Jake Cassins, and Jake's a kid that really, when you watch his film, what really stood out is his athleticism. For a guy who's 6'2", 305 pounds, he moves really well. He's got a great attitude to him. Really intelligent kid. I just think that he's got his best football ahead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, Samuel.
Yeah, next up, Sam Hankey. Sam's a kid, one of the many kids we brought in from Wisconsin, and he's your typical Wisconsin offensive lineman, 6'5". I think he's somewhere in the neighborhood of 305 pounds or something like that. And I think the one thing about him is he came off an injury as a junior, and so didn't get as much, maybe playing time, that kind of thing, and rehab his injury and came back as a senior, had a pretty productive senior year. And I think this kid has got, for being that big, he moves really well. I think he's got a pretty nasty disposition, great personality, and I think he'll be one of those guys in the future that's those road grader types that we're looking for.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Brett Kopp.
Yeah, Brett's a kid that was quite the recruiting battle for Brett. He had multiple offers in our league. He was a kid that committed early, kid out of Wisconsin, kind of a small school kid out there, and just your classic big school or big kid in a small school that really, I think, dominated at that level. And I think as he gets into college and he really learns technique and those types of things, comes from an athletic family. His brother plays at River Falls. They just won the national title. He's an offensive lineman up there. And so, the kid knows how to play football, and I think he's got a great personality. He'll fit in well with that group. And at 6'3", 310, another big body kid that gives us a chance to really look the part and get off the bus, which is half the battle, right? You still have to be able to play, but you need guys that can physically move people in this league. And I think, our mindset's been a little bit about getting some of those kids that have that frame to start with versus maybe shying away from kids that are 240 pounds and hoping they can put on 50 or 60 pounds. You get some of these kids that already have a great size to them to start with, and it gives you a chance to really build something.
Brooks Lawson out of Missouri.
Brooks is a really athletic kid, and really enjoyed recruiting him. Really intelligent kid, works really hard, doesn't say a whole lot, kind of have a quiet demeanor about him, but man, does he play hard. He plays at the end of the whistle, really athletic, can pull, does some of those things really well. And I think from my perspective, he's the kid that comes from a little bit of a bigger school, played a little bit higher level football. So you can tell he's had some really good coaching over the years. And I think he walks in the door on day one being a guy that I think, has the ability to really push those guys ahead of him.
I like this big offensive line class here, Coach. Not only are they big in size, but they're also big in numbers.
Yeah,
I'm a little offended here, though, Coach. As a former undersized offensive lineman, that you're going big on me. It's like you can see the D2 level has passed me by. I'm going to stick to my NAI roots here, but you got to do what's best for the program, Coach. I love it.
Well, and I think, the big thing is in the offensive line position, right? You're going to have probably about 20 guys every year, and you got 20 guys for 5 positions. You're 4 deep. You've got competition. You've got depth, and certainly these guys, we're not necessarily anticipating a true freshman to walk in and play in the offensive line. Next year we'll see a large amount of guys graduate from our program, and so those guys that have been here 2 and 3 signing classes ago now, they're going to step up and be those guys to fill in. But this group of guys, as far as just the actual size and what they bring to the table, it's a great starting point. And I think as we move forward in our program and develop, if you've got that kind of foundation to build off of, you got a chance. And 5 or 6 guys every year, you've got to bring in linemen, because that's the core of who we are. Not only O-line but D-line. We'll talk about here in a second. But really, that's really important for us to continue to grow our program.
Absolutely. Henry Malloy out of Apple Valley, Minnesota.
Yeah, and Henry's a guy we actually talked about playing either offense or defense. He's probably about 270 pounds right now. So a kid that could come in here and maybe be a defensive tackle, but right now we got him on the offensive line. A kid from a place like Cretin-Durham Hall that's got a great tradition, a great history. And I think ultimately for a kid like that, he's played at a high level and certainly has the ability to contribute in this program as well.
All right. And we got Henry Valley here from Franklin, Wisconsin as well.
Yeah, another kid from Wisconsin. Franklin's a great high school program, a big school program over in Wisconsin, and a kid that pulls really well, really athletic, and probably maybe from a height and weight standpoint, maybe just the smallest of the guy. When I say small, I mean we're talking about 6'3", 280. So if that's small, I guess we'll take it. But from the other guys, he's probably the lightest. Let's just put it that way today. But again, seeing him this past weekend, he looks the part. He's got a broad chest, broad shoulders. He'll fill out, and just a great kid who jumped on board back in July and has been with us since day one.
Yeah, excellent. Well, that wraps up the offensive line class. Quarterback's up next, Coach. We're going to stick with the offense here a little bit. Quarterback is a position where you had a lot of depth this past season. Cam Dean ended up going down halfway through the year, and Tate Schaefer, a guy that we were talking about 2 years ago on this day, stepped up and played really well. So you've got some experience and a little bit of depth there. Not a huge amount of signees at quarterback for you this season.
Yeah, well, obviously we feel good about the depth that we do have right now. Going into spring practice, we'll have 4 guys on the roster, and so the competition there. But yeah, with Tate and Bennett, obviously both coming back, and of course last year's quarterback was Gavin Dean and Gavin Stahl. Those guys are both back with the program, and we just felt like we needed a guy that could come in here that had the ability to develop and grow. And the thing I really like about Jamin is he's got great size. He's one of the taller quarterbacks we've recruited, probably the tallest quarterback that we've recruited since we've been here. So he gives us a little bit different flavor in that quarterback room. And he's a kid that obviously a very successful program over at Hills Beaver, has a lot of success both on the basketball court, on the football field, championship type pedigree. A program that, especially in our local area, that has had a lot of success, that develops winners, and that's a key ingredient for that quarterback position. And so I feel really good about a guy like that coming in. And obviously, numbers are a funny thing, right? I mean, obviously we'd love to have depth and all those kind of things, but you also can't have too many guys where you can't develop and you don't have time for get guys reps. They got to get an opportunity to play. And so we feel like with 5/6 quarterbacks in a room, that's kind of a max out look at that room, and we want to make sure that those guys have a chance to develop, and we think Jamin's got a chance to develop. Yeah,
Jamin Metzger out of Hills Beaver Creek. Some of the Cougar fans probably recognize the Metzger name from Hills Beaver Creek. Rex was a wide receiver here. Rex is not. I think he's a cousin of Jamin. I don't think he's the actual
parent.
But yeah, so there's a little bit of that going on.
Yep, and mom's a USF person too. Right. Went to school here, and
Heather,
so yep. And I think again, kid that's 30 minutes away down the road, and
Shout
I think
out Rock County.
There you go, right?
There we go, yeah.
Which Rock County obviously is going to come back later on, but between West Lyon and Central Lyon and Hills Beaver, all those schools that are within 25, 30 miles of us, those are areas we have to do a great job in, because they're, in my mind, they're just as local as the Sioux Falls kids, and they come to Sioux Falls quite a bit, and so we're excited to have them on board.
Yeah. Sam, of course, is from Rock County, Laverne,
right up the road from Hills, but I've got family ties in Hills, Minnesota as well. And yeah, it's great to see. A lot of my teammates were those Northwest Iowa guys. So,
well, there's so much talent in this area, and those kids that are in those small schools around us are very successful championship programs. And so you get those kids that know how to work, that have had success. Those guys only make your program better.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the running back position here next, Coach. You went out, you signed 2 of the top names that were local kids this year. Kind of exciting for those of us that are from the Sioux Falls area. First one, Davion Simonson.
Yeah, Sioux Falls Jefferson product. And, he's a kid that's had a really nice career here. Close family friend of his is Thurl Reestorfer. So obviously people know Thurl. He played here, obviously, was a heck of a running back. But I think Davion showed his wares here on the gridiron here. And it's just a kid that runs really hard, kind of a lower, built to the ground kind of a guy. He's got great lower body strength. Saw this guy several times, whether it was at camps or working out at some of these, Bowers and Riggs and those kind of places. And so he's just a kid that I think's got his best football ahead of him, carries the football, with the violent streak to him. And I think he's a kid that's going to make an impression when he gets here.
Yeah. And he's also another guy whose head coach in high school played with me at USF. So that's kind of a big deal. Apparently, we're getting some good networking going on there, Coach.
Well, Football Legacy Association at work. I love to see that legacy. There we go.
Well, and I think you guys are right. Like, to me, you can go all across the country and find guys. There's no doubt. There's talented players everywhere. But if you can find guys that have played here in town that you've seen multiple times, that you've built a relationship with. I think he was here last year around this time to watch spring practice. And so you have this relationship, you watch him play, you see him develop, and that just helps in the big picture, not only for the commitment part of things, but even retention. Now you're talking about those guys. Obviously, if you're living here in town versus 10 hours away, there's some things that are a challenge when you're 10 hours away. That isn't necessarily the case when you're 10 minutes away. So getting guys that are local, that have a connection, coaches played here, it just makes people more interested. And I'm not saying that you're taking a guy just because he's from Sioux Falls, but you're taking a guy because he has a tie to the community, he has a tie to the university, and like with Thurl, that connection, that only helps you. And so if those guys are carrying the ball on Saturday, that's more exciting. People in the stands recognize them. And I think all in all, you want to do the best you can to recruit the best local talent. And I think for the most part, we've tried to really do a good job as far as identifying who those guys are. And if they pick a different school, whatever. But as long as you're aware of them and you're reaching out and you're recruiting them, give yourself a chance to get those guys on campus, then at least I think you're doing the things the right way.
Absolutely. You also picked up another top running back that was local, Levi Veskerna from Brandon Valley.
Yeah, and I was talking with Tom earlier. This is a guy that's carried the mail quite a bit in his high school career. So this guy's an experienced running back. He runs really hard, low to the ground. Another kid from a great program, obviously Brandon Valley here in town, and certainly had a lot of championship pedigree behind his name. I just think that this is the kind of kid that's going to come in here and make an impact just because of his mentality. He was here at our summer camp, and I was really impressed by how hard he worked, how hard he ran. He's a kid that's really understands the game of football. Went and watched him play a couple times live, and just the way that he carries the ball and runs through contact and stays on his feet and his balance. Really exciting to see what that kid's going to do in a Cougar uniform.
Absolutely. We're excited to see him as well. I think he set the record for rushing yards in a state championship game this past season in Class 11 AAA. So that's a positive thing there, and hopefully he can develop as a Cougar as well. Well, let's move into the tight end position. Those of us that follow USF football know that tight end is a very important position for the Cougars. And so you have a decent class of tight ends coming in this year.
Yeah, we added 3 guys this year, and I really feel like we did a nice job of addressing both what we consider our J-back position and the on-the-ball position. And so the first guy up is Ryder Campbell. He's actually an early enrollee. He's actually been here for a couple weeks already. He graduated high school back in December, and now he's here as an actual student-athlete here on campus. And so we've actually got to see him now for a couple weeks working out in the offseason. And I think the thing that sticks out about Ryder is his personality. The kid really loves football. Obviously, he got here early, moved away from home, and he still could be a senior in high school back home. And I think the one thing that he's got going for him is he's really a natural pass catcher, and he's going to fit that J-back, that role of a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield, that can get a screen, a tight end delay, right? All that kind of stuff. And I really think that he's got the skill set to be, just a really fluid, big-bodied wide receiver, if you will, that J-back position for us.
Absolutely. Well, next up, Lucas Honor.
Yeah, Lucas, I'm really excited about Lucas. Again, another local kid, obviously a great program over at Lincoln High with Freddie over there. But I think the thing with Lucas is I think his best football is ahead of him. He played for a really good program and had to kind of wait his turn to play. And he's a kid that really, with the frame he's got at 6'2.5", 225 pounds, I really think he's going to develop nicely. And he's a kid that we were really excited to add here at the end of the recruiting process. He was here again this weekend. He's a basketball kid, a dual sport guy. Obviously, they have a good program over there basketball-wise. So anytime you can get those kids that have those kind of skill sets that transfer over from the basketball court to the football field, even baseball or whatever, you can't help but recruit those dual sport athletes.
And a lot of success at Lincoln as well.
Yeah, again, kids that just had success, they bring that work ethic into the program, and they're coming from programs, whether it's Jefferson or Brandon or Lincoln. I mean, you're talking about obviously 3 of the top big school programs in the state. That's never a bad thing.
Winners win.
This is true. This is true, right?
And then Luca Tess as well.
Yeah, Luca's probably the guy that we see as that kind of bigger body on the ball. Why? He's a guy that I think can really develop. He's already got a great frame. He's around 6'4", 225, 230 pounds. Another kid that jumped on board from the very beginning back in July and has been with us the whole way through. Great personality, great family. I mean, he's got a chance to be really special. He's going to get bigger and stronger as we go. But man, a guy that he actually did run the tight end delay back in high school on his highlight tape. That's exciting to see. It looked like just like the Cougars runs it. But again, a kid that's got extremely intelligent, really smart kid, works really hard. And on top of all that, I do think his ability to get bigger and stronger and be a dominant down blocking on the line tight end is really there's a really high probability of that happening.
Well, Coach, does that cover? Oh, we got wide receivers yet to cover. We better dive into some wide receivers.
Yeah, so last year we actually had, as you guys probably remember, we had a pretty big wide receiver class, right? We really did. And I thought this year we certainly wanted to be selective. And I think what we tried to do this year was maybe target a different type of body. So this year, these two guys that we brought in are a little bit taller, a little bit rangier body types versus last year. I think we had a couple guys that were a little bit on the shorter side of things. So the first guy up that we have here is Todd Benedict, and he's a kid out of River Falls, Wisconsin. And, I think actually he's a kid that is about 6'2", 6'3". He runs really well. He when you watch his film, he shows the potential to go up and get a football down the sideline and high point it and those types of things. But I really think that bigger body is something that, like a Christian Janis type, if you will, or last year Isaiah Emanuel, he kind of falls into that mold. And for us offensively, we typically have 3 slots of receivers that we kind of pigeonhole guys into, and he definitely fits the role of that bigger body guy, big red zone target and that kind of thing. And I think what I like most about this kid is that I think he shows that potential to be even bigger. I think he can be even a bigger body kid and really create some matchups. And who knows, if he puts on too much weight, maybe he grows into a J somewhere down the road, but he definitely has that frame to be kind of that matchup nightmare on the perimeter.
Well, then you mentioned you signed 2, the other one.
Yeah, Carson, again, a kid that we saw play quite a bit locally. And this is probably one of those situations where the fact that he was local probably really brought our attention to him, because in that football team they've had there over the years, they've had some really talented guys. And he's a guy that we've just kind of been watching since probably last fall. And then all of a sudden you kind of see him produce and you see him do some testing stuff and all that. And then you see him in person. He's a great kid. I think he's got a really good head on his shoulders. And I just think that his potential could be through the roof. I think he's one of these kids that as he gets better and he gets older, he's going to develop through time. And I think his best football is certainly ahead of him. But again, another 6'1" kid, 6'2", a kid that can run, a guy that can jump a little bit. And again, I just don't think you can go wrong with taking local guys.
Yeah, we saw quite a bit of him over at Jefferson the past couple of years. Karsten Sissoko, very talented player. Well, Coach, we're going to jump to the defense next. But before we do that, we're going to do a quick word from one of our sponsors. And so let's hear from Unlimited Painting.
Hey, Sioux Falls and surrounding areas. I'm the owner of Unlimited Painting. Our licensed and insured crew delivers professional results on time and within budget. Not only are we quick, easy, and affordable, but we're going to transform your space with lasting impressions. Unlimited Painting, professional, dependable, and done right the first time. We're offering 15% off any exterior project. Give us a call now for a free quote.
Well, Coach, Unlimited Painting has been a great sponsor for us. If anyone wants to reach out to Unlimited Painting, you certainly can. Huge sponsor of the Coup Coach Cast. Go ahead and call 605-403-9222. Call 605-403-9222. Or you can go to the website, www.unlimitedpaintingsf.com. Hey, it's February. I mean, spring's right around the corner here, guys. We gotta get the homes ready. Everything looking good for the summer. So go ahead and reach out, and they'll take care of you at Unlimited Painting. All right, let's jump back in then. Let's see what we got here. Defensive line, Coach. Defensive line.
Yeah, I think just like we talked about on the offensive side of things, we really looked for some depth. And, when you're looking at D-line, it's similar to offensive line where you have a different type of guy on the inside versus the outside, and no different with us, the D-line, with some bigger body guys at D-tackle than D-end. And I really felt like, we've been pretty fortunate here. We've been pretty talented at that position since I've been here. And this is hopefully a class that can develop and be that kind of that next guy in mentality with some of these kids.
Well, who are some of the kids? Let's start off.
Yeah, first guy up is Zach Drenth. And, Zach's kind of an interesting situation. So when we saw him this summer at camp, he was a little bit sick, and he'd lost about 15, 20 pounds, and he didn't look great, to be honest with you. I mean, he looked like he had obviously been under the weather, and he was down to about 215 pounds. And then sure enough, we see him show up here last weekend, and he's almost 240 pounds. And so he looks the part already as a college defensive end. And I just think that program that he's come from, again, like a lot of the local ones here in town, Central Line over there, that you talk about a guy, a former Sioux Falls football player.
Teammate of mine,
Curtis over there. And those guys are just well coached. And I know they didn't have the great year that they wanted this year, but in the past, they've been a championship contender. And this kid has been taught, he's been taught how to play the football the right way. And I really think he's going to come in here and make an impact. Probably 6'2", 6'2.5", like I said, 235, 240 pounds. But I do believe a guy that played both ways in high school has the ability to come in here and be a really physical, dominant defensive end for us.
It's almost like that Coach Bob Young coaching tree kind of knows what they're doing. I mean, the guys that played for Coach Young under Coach DeBoer, Coach Morrell, those guys seem to produce pretty good talent. I don't know.
Well, and I think those kids, like I said, they're taught the right way to play football. They play hard. They're coached hard. There's an element that they have a certain standard for those kids. And when they come here, that makes my job a lot easier when those kids already have a pretty good handle on what the expectation is. Typically they're not kids that are, lazy or don't finish through the line. They've already been instilled that toughness, and that makes my job a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, next up, Connor Henson.
Yeah, Connor's a kid, to be quite frank with you. He might be a tight end or a D end. Again, another longer kid. And when we were kind of looking at this recruiting class, we put a big emphasis on that 6'3", 6'4" body type. And I think Connor's the kind of kid over at Sun Prairie, another Wisconsin kid, that has that length that, we'll see if he develops into a D end, great. But could he also be a tight end? Yeah. And like a guy like Connor's great because he's like, I just want to get on the field, right? Whatever it takes to get on the field. And we love that about kids when they have that vibe and they have that want to, and whatever it takes to get on the field and help the team, I want to do that. And that's something that really stuck out when we were recruiting him. But I just really think that his potential as far as getting off the edge and bending the corner, and then you watch him block on offense as a tight end, he's finishing guys through the whistle and he's running his feet on contact. And so I just don't think you can go wrong with a kid who's 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds that's doing that stuff on film.
Yeah. Bryce.
Yeah, Bryce, again, another kid out of West Lyon, a great program, obviously state champs and all that kind of stuff. And he joins a couple teammates, Carson and Tate, that were here last year. And so that's been a nice little pipeline for us, getting back to that West Lyon area and Central Lyon and all that kind of stuff. And this kid has got all the tools to be a dominant player. He really does. Again, another kid that could probably play either side of the ball. But again, at 6'2", 275 pounds, he probably looks like a young Preston Yankee, if that's a good example. That's kind of how he's built right now. And so whether or not he comes in here as a defensive tackle or eventually moves over to the offensive side of the ball, we're going to find a place for this guy to play because I think he's going to make an impact early.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing him. Ben Meyer as well.
Ben, dynamic player, right? I mean, this kid, again, another kid that we saw at camp, and he had a little bit of a hamstring injury at the first camp we saw him at. And so the rest of his summer was a little bit limited. And I can't even begin to tell you how explosive this kid is. He's probably one of the most explosive side-to-side guys we saw at camp, and his 10-yard and 20-yard burst is incredible. And this kid, again, he played tight end and D end in high school. Probably could be a D end as well. But again, he just fits that mold of a longer body kid, extremely athletic, probably broad jumps close to 9.5, 10 feet, which to us, we look at things like broad jump and vertical jump and bench press and all those things to kind of give you a better idea of the makeup of these guys. And this is a guy that tested really well. Really intelligent kid, tough kid, very athletic family, and excited to have him on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up, that name looks familiar.
Yeah, but to your point, not related at all to Dawson. We've asked that question about 10 times. Wisner and Pierce, Nebraska, aren't too far away from each other, but we dip into Northeast Nebraska for this kid. And this is a kind of a guy that, he kind of played offensive line, tight end type of in a smaller school in Nebraska, and I'm really curious to see how well he's going to adapt to, just to the style of play and getting bigger and stronger in the weight room and all those kind of things, because he's got a great frame and he's a really good kid. And I just like the way that the kid went about his business. You watch him play on film, we're watching his highlights and all that kind of stuff. And he's relentless. He plays hard. I do think that, for him, getting bigger and stronger is, again, like a lot of our guys, that's a big emphasis going into this first year for them. But I really think he's got the tools and the length because, you can get bigger and stronger and put on weight and all that, but you can't get necessarily taller and you can't get length from arms, wingspan, all that kind of stuff. And so he presents some of those things that you kind of have a great piece of clay to start molding, and we're excited to see what he can do when he gets here.
Well,
Big Tasty, maybe the best nickname in the entire
Big Tasty, right.
Tristan Seidel. And Tristan, again, if you know anything about Wisconsin football, Arrowhead is a dominant program over in Wisconsin, the biggest school, biggest class. And this is a kid that actually went through some transition, ended up at Arrowhead for his senior year, became a starter, became a dominant player, helped him win a state title. But this kid's all at 6'3", 275 pounds. And the thing I love about Tasty is he came here on his junior day visit. He had little business cards. He was trying to sell himself. He was very personable. I love his attitude. I love his personality. Hard kid not to like, and I just like the way he plays. He's kind of a bruiser, kind of a banger on the inside, and for us, that inside defensive tackle, it's going to be nice to have a guy with some length, some height. And I think that he can be a 290-pound, 3 technique when it's all said and done.
Well, and Coach, my last name's Birger, so maybe Big Tasty and I need to get together and make a Big Tasty burger. do some marketing here, Tom. Tom, we got to work on this, okay?
The content potential is unlimited here heading into the season. I'm excited now. So.
Yeah, Tasty's a great kid. I do think that. Again, he's a kid that same. A lot of the common theme you're seeing here is guys from winning programs, guys that understand what it takes, and again, this is a kid that demonstrated that all year long.
Yep. All right, well, let's jump back over here then. Another defensive lineman.
Yeah, Ashton Wakely, a kid from Hardington, Newcastle, which, again, northeast Nebraska, right up there, not too far from Wisner and Pierce and all those over there. But, a kid that really showed well at the summer camp circuit. And when he came up here, he showed up in a pair of jeans, cowboy boots, kind of a tight shirt. And you're just like, yeah, this guy looks like he could be a defensive end. Kind of that small school kid that was probably throwing hay bales or something like that. And all of a sudden now he's going to show up and get bigger and stronger and get his technique down. And again, smaller school, obviously. And once he gets kind of in a program and he gets around kids his size routinely, I think he's just going to get bigger and better. And I think the sky's the limit for him.
Excellent. Well, Coach, that covers the defensive line. Let's move on to the linebackers.
Yeah. The one thing for us at linebacker is we're looking for guys that can really run sideline to sideline. I think as much as the game is changing, it's a spread game now. And so the way we play defense with those linebackers kind of out of the box and in the overhang positions, we need some guys who can really run. And I think the first guy up here, I want to guess, is probably Brogan, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Brogan's a kid out of Boone Central, Nebraska, another Husker recruit here. But this kid came to our camp, and I'll be honest with you, we didn't know a whole lot about him. He came to our summer camp here at USF, and after he got done testing and running and changing direction, I was like, I'm not sure what that guy is, but he's something. He's an athlete, and we can find a place for him. He could be a safety. He might be a nickel. He was a heck of a high school running back, but like I said, we already addressed the running back position with the 2 local guys, so we took him, and we're going to find a place for him because he's a guy that you got to get him on the field at some point because he can do some of those things that are just natural. He can run, tackle, and hit. And what really stuck with me when I watched this film from his junior year, he's playing even corner, and he's backpedaling, and he's high pointing balls, so you can kind of see his ball skills. You can kind of see him, just being a natural football player, and those are things that are really positive.
All right, well, let's move on to Tate.
This is a guy that, to be honest with you, this comes from an old connection I had back in the day. And his high school coach used to be at Mount Pleasant High School in Iowa. And so I got a phone call about a month and a half ago. And he's like, hey, Coach, I got this kid, and you got to make sure you check him out. And I'm like, where? I thought he was at Mount Pleasant, but now he's over at Linn-Mar coaching. And so called me up, and Linn-Mar is kind of over there in central Iowa. A good program, tough kids. And he's like, this kid, I'm not sure what he is. He goes, he plays tight end for us. He plays fullback. He plays linebacker, some safety. He goes, but this guy's a college football player. So I said, okay, let's check him out. And sure enough, I was really impressed with this video. Just a tough physical kid. And again, I'm not so sure that this guy's a safety, but man, to see what he was doing in high school at that position, and I know he's not a tight end because he doesn't have the size we're looking for, but he fits kind of that weak side linebacker or field side outside linebacker for us. Great kid, great family, and he was all about it. And yeah, I think sometimes, those things help when you've done it long enough and you meet some people and they know the kind of kid you're looking for. Sometimes guys like this kind of show up on your doorstep, and I'm really fortunate that he did. Jensen, a local kid, right? And I've seen Jensen so much over the years. Obviously, they play right here in our home stadium, Sioux Falls Christian. We share the field with those guys. But Jensen's a kid that been watching now for a couple years. This guy is a weight room freak. This guy loves to work out. He takes care of his body. He's all about it. You watch him physically. This is a kid that's got some really good tools. He's explosive. Obviously, Sioux Falls Christian, a phenomenal football program. They've had a ton of success. I don't know if they've lost one game maybe in 2 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So, Coach does a great job with those guys. He's produced FCS talent. I mean, for a small school like them to produce that kind of talent, that really says a lot about the coaching staff, Coach Smith and those guys over there. But I really think this guy's got a chance to develop into a nice player, great family, tough kid, smiles all the time, just kind of a happy-go-lucky kid, but kind of arrives with a nasty disposition and a physical player.
Well, that covers the linebackers.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the secondary, Coach, defensive backs.
Yeah, an area that, we seem to, you can never have enough skill guys in the back end and especially athletic guys. And to me, corners are sometimes the hardest guys to evaluate because on film, it's not the greatest film in the world, and so you can't really see them, You're not getting the same look you get on an NFL or a college game on Saturdays afternoon. So you're trying to get a vibe in camp. You're trying to see their testing numbers. And so between safety and corner, I felt like we did a good job of addressing the need this year with our first guy up here. I'm not sure who we got corners or safeties up first, but we do have So Sammy. So Sam is a guy that actually was a dual threat guy up at Wayzata. Wayzata is a big school up in Minneapolis, one of the biggest schools, won a state title a couple years ago. But this is a kid that is a great kid. He's really been resilient. He's gone through some tough things personally. And I really think this kid's got a bright future. Probably receiver, probably a DB, wherever we can get him on the field the fastest. But I think this kid's got great potential. Another former friend of mine, former coach, a true friend, former coach, but a guy up there in the Twin Cities, when he committed and he saw that on Twitter, he was pretty ecstatic because he said, this guy is probably a sleeper as a DB. And I agree. He's got great feet. He's tough. He's long. And I think he's a kid that can develop into a nice player for us. Braden's a kid that when I saw him at camp, he was so productive, which is kind of saying something for a safety. But every time we got into one-on-one drills and he would backpedal and defend passes and understand how to move his feet and some of the things that you look for in a young DB, just the raw skills. But this guy had the skills as well as the actual ability to shuffle, cut routes off, some of the technical stuff. His high school coach is Brad Zelenovich, who's I've known forever over there at Southeast Polk. Again, Southeast Polk is like the Brandon Valley or Lincoln High of Iowa over there. Great program, championship contender every year. But this kid is a true football player. He understands the game. And I really think this kid's got the ability to play boundary safety for us and maybe even slide down to a nickelback, but just a really good football player who has a real good knack for being around the football. Preston, local kid, right? This guy's a really good athlete. And talking with him and his parents, I think this kid's kind of got that mentality. He wants to prove something, And I think he had some injuries early on in his career that limited his playing time a little bit. But he's a local kid here. Again, that we've seen him. We've watched him test. He's really athletic. He's really versatile. And I just think that this is the kind of kid that might surprise you a little bit. Much like Lucas Hunter, those are guys that this program over there, the kind of coaching they're getting. Not just Freddie over there, but they have some other guys that are alums of Sioux Falls. And so I just know that those guys, I can trust them when they say, hey, this kid can help you. He's going to develop. Like, I take their word for it because those guys know what good football players look like. They put enough guys in college level. They know what they look like. And this is a kid that we felt like has a chance to develop. And I'm really excited about what he brings to the table because I think he's got the right demeanor. I think he's got the right attitude. And he definitely has some of the skill sets you need in the testing numbers.
Next up, Isaiah Wyatt.
Isaiah, kid out of Grand Island, Nebraska, which is on the western side of the state over there. But he's a kid that came up to our camp. And, he is all of 6'3". He can run and jump. He's super athletic. He reminds me so much of Davion, our current corner from Lincoln, Nebraska, that kind of a raw kid on film, not a guy that's probably played a ton of corner and all that. Maybe he's a little bit needs to get polished up in some of the skills of the actual position of corner. But, man, the raw ability, the jumping, the running, all that, the height and length, it's so hard to find a kid at our level that's 6'3", 180 pounds that can do all those things. And I think if he continues to develop and he has the right mindset, he's got a chance to be a special player. Jeremiah, he's our second early enrollee. So Jeremiah is a kid out of Wisconsin over in the Milwaukee area. And he's a kid that's been here for a couple weeks now. And again, I didn't think much of it as him being a wide receiver until I saw him running some routes the other day in the gym. But he's really smooth. He catches the ball well. But we like him as a corner, obviously, in this class. He's got some length to him. Another kid that we battled some of the bigger programs in our league over. And really excited to have him on board because I think he's got that ability and that knack to be a good football player. But not only that, to make plays on the football and be able to defend deep balls and have body control. Just a really smooth athlete that so far what I've seen the first couple of weeks, him and Ryder both, those guys are certainly the kind of guys we're looking for. And so I feel very confident with him and Ryder both after being around him for a couple of weeks that those guys are going to be great additions to our program.
And I'm pretty jealous of the hair that he's got going.
Fantastic
there.
hair. He does have great hair.
Yeah. I'll make sure to comment on that. Tom Frederick has some good hair over there, but yeah, all hair team. All right. Next up, special teams coach, punter and kicker.
Yep, we felt like we had to increase the competition in that room, and we've got some young, talented kickers. And obviously, since Nick Hernandez graduated, that's been kind of a little bit of a revolving door. Someone's got to step up and take that position by the horns a little bit this spring and kind of make it theirs. But we feel like I think Ethan's the guy we got up next.
Pull it up here.
Yep.
Ethan.
Kid out of Nebraska, another Nebraska kid. But Ethan's a kid that really shows good explosiveness when the ball kind of jumps off his foot. He also can punt a little bit too. So a real dual threat guy at that position, which is huge because, ultimately if you got a guy who can only do one skill set, either punt or kick, he's not as flexible and he doesn't really give your roster as much flexibility. And so I think with this kid here, I really like him. He's got a great pop off his foot. He's got good composure. I think him and I talked a little bit about just the actual timing of college. So the snap to hold the kick time has got to get better. But that's for a lot of kids, right? The transition from kicking off a block in high school to now kicking off the ground. The nice thing about him, though, was he did kick off the ground at some of these camps and all that stuff. And so I've seen him do that. And the ability to lift the ball up off the ground is something I think he's pretty good at. And I think he's got a chance to compete as a freshman.
Coach, you mentioned, punting and kicking. Do you want someone that's going to do both for the Cougars, or are you looking for someone that can kind of find their specialty once they get here and just settle into one of those positions?
Well, in a perfect world, you'd love to have a guy that can do both. And just from a simple logistics standpoint, because now in your travel roster and all that, you've got more depth and you have backups and all that kind of stuff. Believe it or not, a guy like Tate Schaefer, we know that he can actually kick. And if we got in a pinch, he could go out and kick and extra points and all that stuff. So we have some of that stuff as far as we develop that on the roster. But for me, if I have to have a guy just kick off, just punt, and just extra point field goal, we'll do that. In a perfect world, you'd love to save some of the roster spots because you're limited on how many guys can travel in the league. If you did have a guy that could do all three, that certainly makes your roster more flexible. But, we already take a long snapper right now, and just a long snapper. He doesn't play another position. So, again, another area where you're committing those roster spots to just one thing. It's okay. It's not the end of the world, but in a perfect world, you'd like to have a guy that could do both. But, again, the kicking and punting is pretty cut and dry. It's not that hard to evaluate who's better, right? Who kicks it the farthest, who has the most hang time, who makes it. It's a little bit different when you're trying to evaluate a quarterback or a linebacker and you're trying to figure out, well, he does this okay and he does that okay, he does this great, does that great, versus a kicker and a punter. It's pretty cut and dry, hang time and making missing field goals. So we'll see how it goes, but I think the competition is the biggest thing, and I think he certainly increases the competition in that room.
Well, Coach, before we dive into some of the mid-year transfers, we're going to step back a little bit, review some of what you said. It seems like you really focused on recruiting local kids that were from local high schools. You got not just the Sioux Falls schools, Brandon Valley, you saw West Lyon, Central Lyon, you saw Hills Beaver Creek, a lot of local kids. You also were able to dive into kids from Nebraska, from Wisconsin, and some of those. How do you kind of pattern your recruiting for your staff?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we try to find guys that have a history in that area. So, for example, Coach Capitani's from Iowa. He does a great job down in Iowa. He's a guy that his dad was a high school coach in Iowa. He played at Wartburg, so he knows the area inside and out. And then you got Coach Luters, who's from South Dakota. So I think he does a great job hitting our normal recruiting territory right around here. And then you got like Coach Jacob Toot, and Toot's a former player here, is an alum, and he is from Wisconsin. So putting him over Wisconsin, I really thought made a big difference this year. And then you take the other guys that we have on staff, where Alex Johnson is from Eagan, Minnesota. That's on the eastern side of Minneapolis. And so he kind of recruits eastern Minnesota, eastern cities into Wisconsin. And then Jay Schlichty, who's from Mankato, kind of has that south central Jake Cassins and those guys up in that area. And so that's probably the first thing I look at is where's the guy have some experience? Where does he have some comfort factor with? Also helps on the budget because they can stay at their relative's house or whatever, right? Shout out to John Hart out there. But I think that's the biggest thing. And then ultimately, you just kind of find a niche where guys might have some connections. So next year, we're actually going to dip into Texas a little bit because Coach Lucas is a Texas native down by Dallas. And I noticed some schools in our league kind of go after that. And then the last piece of that is probably outside that, we call it kind of a gas tank area. What can you get to on a tank of gas? But where are you going to direct flight into? So Arizona, Colorado, where actually Nashville's got direct flights through Allegiant. So stuff like that, that's probably where you kind of set up your parameters, because the thing I worry about is you put a guy in an area and then all of a sudden that coach leaves and you don't go back to that area for 2 or 3 years. And you kind of, I wouldn't say waste, but you create all that goodwill in that area and then you kind of miss it because you don't have any connection anymore. So, and recruiting's changed a lot, right? As far as how we do things now, the whole calendar of recruiting is so different because guys are committing they're committing back in July for the most part, and so the idea that we see most of our kids at the summer camp circuit, it lends itself to being roughly, a tank of gas, perimeter. That's about as far as we go that way. And then kind of just branch out with, if a guy has a connection or somebody's an alum and they know somebody, that might create a little bit of a unique connection. But for the most part, that's how we set it up.
Well, Coach, let's dive right back in here. You got some mid-year transfers on the list. Let's go through a few of those.
Yeah. So, obviously with the portal and all that kind of stuff everyone's talking about, we had a couple guys hit the portal. We found a couple guys in the portal. The big thing for us is we did graduate heavily in the offensive line, 3 or 4 guys. We had a guy go in the portal. And so tried to find some bodies that would fit what we're looking for that had some college experience. And so the first guy is Cole Chalistari, a kid out of Garden City Community College. And he's kind of unique in that he visited last summer and almost pulled the trigger and then decided to go back to Garden City for another year of football. And then after basically mid-season, we stayed in touch with him, and he's like, okay, now I'm ready to go. Because I think sometimes those kids go back and maybe try to up their stock and maybe try to get a Division I offer, an FCS offer. And so he felt like this was the best fit for him. We felt pretty comfortable, and he was the first guy to jump on board just because of our previous relationship dating back to last summer's recruiting of him and his family.
All right, next up, Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus is a kid that we actually played against him, obviously, this year at Black Hill State. He was a rotational guy at Black Hill State, big body kid. Really good frame on him, and a kid that I think has got great potential. Actually, his dad is Kelly Stouffer, who I remember from back in the day, the Rushville, Nebraska native. I remember hearing that on ESPN, but he played quarterback at Colorado State and actually worked for ESPN. But Marcus is a kid that's got a great demeanor, great personality. He works really hard. He's got a really good frame to him. And I think like a lot of kids, he was looking for a fresh start. And so being from Rushville, Nebraska, and going to Black Hill State probably made sense out of high school. And then the opportunity when he was in the portal, we found him, and he kind of looked like the kind of guy that would fit what we're looking for. And so far, I've been really pleased with him and what he's done so far in the first couple of weeks.
Gabe Forrest.
Yeah, love Gabe's length. 6'6", 6'7" kid, 285 pounds. Again, when you're looking at kids that are going to come in from a junior college or whatever the case might be, you're looking for kids that would maybe fit in this part of the country. And he's actually from Reno, Nevada, or Sparks, which is kind of, from what he tells me, his hometown similar to Sioux Falls. And so the direct flight and being able to get here and travel and all that kind of stuff out of Vegas or whatever the case might be, that made sense travel-wise. And then he was a kid that had been there for 2 years and really wanted to find a home and develop. And we just felt like he was the kind of body type, that tackle that we had been missing. Kind of a Tyler Yukonish, long arm, 6'6", 6'7" kid, and hopefully he can develop and be that kind of a body for us.
So those guys are all offensive linemen that are coming in.
Yes, we had a 3 at semester, and they all got here back in January, and they've been here now for almost 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, you also had some other guys too, Seth.
Yeah, Seth's a Minnesota kid, a local kid that spent a little bit of time down at Northwestern in Orange City, and a kid that has a lot of connections, a lot of family here in Sioux Falls. And so when he was looking for a place to kind of find home, he had played down at Northwestern. This made sense to him with his family and friends in here in town and not too far from his hometown. And so he wanted to join the roster, and we were excited to have him. And I've been really pleased. He works really hard. He's got a great he's kind of got a great shoulder box structure about him, and he's going to be a linebacker for us. And again, with a lot of these guys, you got a pretty good handle on what they look like and what they can do testing wise. But until we get through spring ball and really see him tackle and block and all that stuff, we'll have a better sense. But for right now, he's worked really hard. I think he's going to be a good addition.
Their high school program with the championship pedigree too.
Yeah, he's a kid that, and again, Northwestern's got a great program. And so when guys like that are looking to join your program, again, you do the research and all that, and good kid, just wanted a fresh start, closer to home, whatever the case might be. But I thought he'd be a great take.
Sam, can you imagine a kid from Northwestern transferring to USF?
I think some of the NAI guys are going to be. I mean, I might have to dig out my Red Raider hater shirt. But,
different times.
Times. Right? Yeah, times are different.
You're right. That wouldn't have happened probably 15 years ago.
Oh, that's interesting. Well,
glad to have you, Sam.
Yeah, Dion.
So Deion's a kid that this goes back to Coach Lucas and his connections down in Texas. And so this is a young man that actually had trained with Coach Lucas when he was doing his wide receiver training stuff down there before he arrived here as our wide receiver coach. And he went to Dodge City for 1 semester, and he stayed in touch with Coach Lucas. And when I saw this kid on film, this dude now he's not the biggest guy in the world, right? But this dude can flat out fly, and he is fast, and he can return kicks. And what I thought about this kid, Deion, I thought he could be that element we haven't necessarily had as just a kind of a main punt returner skill guy. But he's not very big. He's definitely got those quicks, and he can make people miss. But, man, when I saw him test a couple weeks ago and I see him run routes, I mean, he has got some movement to him. And so really excited to see what he brings to the table. And so when he wanted to join us, and, again, the previous relationship with Coach Lucas, being from Texas and all that kind of stuff, this young man hopped on a plane with 2 bags and nothing else, never been here before, and showed up in the dorms, and now here he is. And so to his credit, he's working his tail off, going to class, and really nice kid, really proud of the type of mentality he's brought, and looking forward to see what he can do this spring.
Cam.
Yeah, Cam's a kid from Southwest Minnesota State. Obviously, Redwood Falls, not too far from here. A guy that we watched his film. We played against him, and he was a guy that played quite a bit for those guys, and he's got a great frame on him, and he kind of played a nickel overhang linebacker spot, and whether he stays at safety for us or moves to outside linebacker, really liked the connection. When he came down to visit, he seemed very excited about Sioux Falls. I talked to their coaches up there. They said he was a great kid. They'd like to have him stay, but he was looking for a different experience, maybe a little bigger town and whatnot. And so when he was ready to jump on board, I was pretty excited. And then so far, these first couple of weeks, I've been pretty impressed. Like, he looks the part. He's got a great frame. He runs well. He can jump, do all those kind of things. And he's been working hard in the weight room. And so, yeah, we'll see what spring brings. But it's certainly nice to add a body like that who's got NSIC experience.
Absolutely. MJ Burks.
MJ. So, again, previous connections. So we've got a couple guys from that St. Louis area. We've got Vion, we've got Rayshawn, and we've got AJ. And those guys kind of knew this guy from high school. They were kind of 7-on-7 competitors and that kind of stuff back in the day. And so Simpson College, it's where I used to be the head football coach, so I'm very familiar with Simpson. And the head coach at Simpson is a good buddy of Coach Cap, our defensive coordinator. So this kid actually played a lot, and I think he started as a true freshman down at Simpson College as a true freshman. And so for me, it's kind of the same thing that these FCSs are doing. They're kind of dipping down to quote unquote the level below them and finding some of the better players. And I think this kid showed out really well. Like I told our coaching staff, I don't care who you are. If you're playing and starting as a true freshman in college, that's a guy that we could take a look at. Now, he's not the tallest guy in the world. He kind of falls in line with some more other guys. He's about 5'9", but he's a kid that's shown some really good quickness. He's a really intelligent kid. He looks like he's got the ball skills we need. And just watch him change direction and move. He certainly is very similar to the guys we have. And I think at that position where we graduated 3 or 4 guys from last year's squad, bringing him on board and letting him go through a spring with us is going to give us a chance to see if, maybe that's the future corner.
Cordell Wilson.
Cordell's a kid out of the Twin Cities area that we've known about for a long time. We were recruiting him, and then he got a late offer to Western Illinois about 3 years ago. He ended up going to Western Illinois and playing as a true freshman, and then played special teams. And so when he went back into the portal, he had a lot of friends on our football team from Blake Stahl and some of those guys that knew of him. And so when he kind of made his intentions that he was looking at coming back closer to home and playing Division II for his senior year, it was a no-brainer for me. Number one, like I told him the other day, he's kind of like that veteran quarterback in the NFL that you want to kind of mentor the young kids. And with that room being so young, having a veteran senior, because we don't have a senior DB in the room right now at corner, he's really going to provide some stability. He understands college football. He's been a 3-year player at an FCS school. I definitely expect him to help us on the football field. But aside from that, I also think that he's going to bring some experience, some maturity. And he's already done that, as a senior. And so to me, kind of adding that experience along with that ability that he has to come in and be a playmaker, we're hopeful that he's a guy that kind of fills that void at the corner spot.
Well, Coach, you went through the list here. I think we hit everyone on the list. So we'll kind of jump back in now. What's your overall impression of the transfers that you were able to bring in?
Good kids. Number one, I'll say they're all good kids. They all work hard. Nobody's been late for those 6 a.m. workouts. They seem to be all about the team, which is important to me. And I think, it's one thing to add a talented guy, but it's also really important that you add the right people, because we don't need guys coming in here and tearing apart the things that we've tried to build, culture and all that. And the one thing that's really been evident with all these guys, they're very humble kids. They work really hard. I'm not yelling and screaming because they don't wear the right stuff in the weight room or they don't show up on time. They're doing all those things. So that makes me feel really good that we've got a chance to be pretty good with these kids. And then on top of all that, I do think they're showing some of the things that we thought they could do from an athleticism standpoint. And we're not doing a ton right now other than lifting and change of direction and speed work. But I've just seen some athleticism type things out of these guys that makes me feel pretty encouraged that we've got a chance to be able to kind of do some things with these guys.
Sam, you have any questions for Coach here?
No, I'm just excited to talk football here in February and excited for the event tonight. And I won't be able to be there, but it's a great time to get everybody together. And like I said, get excited.
Yeah, it seems like it's been forever since the last time we got together, but it's only been a couple months.
I know.
And we're already, believe it or not, come Friday, we'll be 3 weeks out from spring break. February 28th, we go on spring break, and then spring practice starts the week after we get back from spring break. And then we're out of school April 29th or 30th or something like that. So it's a quick semester. We've already talked about that. We've talked about the schedule's out, right? We know what the schedule's going to look like for 26. So we open up at home with Black Hill State on a Thursday night. So that'll be exciting. And then a little bit different schedule next year. We've got Mary back on the schedule. We've got Jamestown for the first time. We go up to Jamestown to actually play a game, not just practice, right? We've done that a few times, Tom. And then no Bemidji, no Northern, and no Duluth this year, which is unusual. So, and then again, with the 6 home games and the crosstown rival being basically 7 home games, we only have 2 overnight trips next year. So kind of a different schedule, but we look forward to it and excited about working with our guys right now and, and looking forward to what we can do this spring.
Coach, I think signing day is always such a big thing because we just miss football so much. And this is a chance for us to get back together and talk about football. And so I always appreciate talking with you on signing day. It's going to be interesting to go back in a couple years, right? We talked about Tate Schaefer. It was a couple years ago, right? Yeah. If we go back and look at this video in 2 years and say, who were some of the guys that really stood out? Those are always the exciting things to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think you look back at some of the guys that have played quite a bit for us these last couple of years, a guy like a Hank Brown, Adonis Hutchinson, Bubba. Bubba's a guy going to be his 4th year in the program this coming fall that who knew 3 or 4 years ago that Bubba would be that kind of player. Certainly we had hoped and had anticipation that he would be, but until it plays out, you never know. And I think there's some of these guys that are kind of behind the shadows right now that we hope to step out into the spotlight this fall, and the offensive line especially. But I'm really excited about this group, and they're working really hard. And, every year you feel positive this time of year, but I do think that that's the fun part looking back on it. And I already look back at some of the guys like an Andy Henson and London Kolb and, all these guys that we sat here and talked about a few years ago that are now mainstays and all conference performers, which makes it all pretty rewarding that it does pan out, because they don't always pan out, right? Obviously, but for the most part, our retention's been awesome. We have the largest number of guys on our roster in the spring since I've been here. So that's very, very positive. And so guys are staying and developing. And I think that's how you become a better football program, where guys stay and develop.
Yeah, good. Well, Coach, we're very excited for Cougar football. I know this summer we'll probably try to come out to some of the workouts and practices and things, but what you mentioned spring football coming up. Do you have a kind of a timeline for what's going on this spring?
Yeah. So right now we will start on the second Saturday of March, and then we'll basically go every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then wrap that up on April 18th with some type of either a spring game or inter-squad scrimmage. And that would be the end of spring practice at that point. But I think
No scrimmage this year?
Well, you know,
That's
we've
fine,
talked.
just curious.
No, it's a great question. So the last couple of years we have, of course, as you guys know, the NCAA allows you to play outside competition. I think the thing that we're running into a little bit, to be frank with you, is do we have the numbers and the health? Because of some of the injuries we had in the offseason, there's several of those guys that will not participate in spring drills. They won't be ready yet. They'll be ready by probably June. But part of it is too, is I think, you know, who do we play? Where do we go? In the past, it's worked out well because I don't want to play somebody that we're going to play in the regular season. And I'm not really crazy about driving 5 or 6 hours to go play,
Right.
you know, a game
Scrimmage,
like that,
yeah.
So I don't want to say the novelty's worn off, but the novelty's kind of worn off a little bit. And I just think we have the type of team every year it's different that we could use just the focus on us. But we'll see. Like I said, I've talked to a couple programs about maybe doing a joint practice, which might be beneficial. I know some of the teams in our league have done that, but yeah, I just think big picture wise, it's different every year. And right now, got to figure out what's best for our football team here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, Coach, I wanted to wrap up. Shout out Durant Foot, Unlimited Painting, Eric Engelstad, Atomic Wings. Okay, give the Atomic Wing here. I'll take a bite of the wing real quick. But yeah, those guys, awesome sponsors. If anyone else is interested in sponsoring next year, reach out. We'd love to have you. We do have a little bit of overhead, you know, associated with the show, so it's always nice to have people help out once in a while. But yeah, we appreciate everyone for tuning in this season and watching the show and supporting us. Received lots of positive feedback, and I'm looking forward to another season of the Q Coach Cast again in 2026.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. It's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, as always, special thanks to Tom Frederick, our camera guy sitting over there, Tim Hyatt, Matt Witwicky for helping with some of the production stuff, the USF Athletic Department, the NSIC, and my co-host Sam Dooyema. For Coach Jim Glogowski, I'm Chad Birger. Until next time, go Cougars.